The anti-war congressman saw preparedness as a cover for a multiplicity of evils, a pretext by which the wealthy lined their pockets. "It is a strange fact that only the rich people tolerate the thought of war," said Congressman Clyde H. Tavener of Illinois, accusing a very powerful group of men of profiting from arms sales. Congressman Warren Worth Bailey of Pennsylvania called preparedness the sheerest rot because the United States was not liable to be invaded. In October 1915, Bryan made a speaking tour through Texas, Mississippi, Virginia, and New York, warning huge enthusiastic crowds of the dangers of preparedness. The president was moving in the opposite direction. In early November, Wilson called for preparedness not for war, but only for defense, and sent plans to Congress to enlarge the Army and Navy and to create a Continental Army that would be a national force under federal control. These plans stirred still greater controversy. Congressman Kitchen accused Wilson of setting off an arms race that would make the whole world an armed camp. Outside Congress and the anti-war organizations, a well-known individual spoke up for peace. "I don't believe in preparedness," said Henry Ford, who was famous for putting together the moving assembly line and interchangeable parts and for paying auto workers $5 a day, then a fabulous wage, to make the most popular automobile in the United States. "It's like a man carrying a gun. Men and nations who carry guns get into trouble. If I had my way, I'd throw every ounce of gunpowder into the sea and strip soldiers of their insignias." Ford's words reached Rosika Schwimmer, one of the leaders of the International Women's Conference against the war, who came to Detroit to persuade him that mediation could bring peace. In the absence of any official peace efforts, Ford decided to act. In November 1915, Henry Ford traveled to New York, chartered a ship, and a week before sailing invited 115 well-known men and women to sail with him as peace commissioners and set up a permanent peace conference in Europe. At a press conference on November 24, he explained, "We're going to have the boys out of the trenches by Christmas. The main idea is to crush militarism and get the boys out of the trenches. Our object is to stop war for all times and also preparedness." William Jennings Bryan, Thomas Edison, and a host of other luminaries saw the peace ship off as a band played the most popular song of 1915, "I Didn't Raise My Boy to Be a Soldier." "I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier. I brought him up to be my pride and joy. Who dares to place a musket on his shoulder to shoot some other mother's darling boy? Let nations arbitrate their future troubles. It's time to lay the sword and gun away. There'd be no war today if mothers all would say, 'I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier.'" In the absence of any clear indication of Henry Ford's intentions, the peace ship seemed a harebrained scheme. The New York Times drew Ford as David hurling a Model T at the gigantic god of war. The New York Herald showed him turning a crank in his own head. The ridicule, Ford's lack of a concrete plan for initiating and sustaining mediation, and division among the peace commissioners, some of whom never visited the permanent seat of the peace conference in Europe, doomed the Ford Peace Initiative to failure. But for all the jokes, the venture, financed entirely by Henry Ford, showed how far a private citizen would go to try to end the war. As 1915 ended and Henry Ford pursued peace, the president advocated preparedness and deplored the variety of opinions Americans held about the war. During 1915, preparedness advocates had all too often combined their demands for military spending with attacks on immigrants and appeals for 100% Americanism, initially perhaps because Irish Americans and German Americans endorsed neutrality. But bigotry had no roots in reason and acquired its own momentum. As though it were impossible to augment the armed services without indulging in nativism, President Wilson adopted the rhetoric of 100% Americanism as he moved away from peace and toward preparedness. In December 1915, he called for bigger armed forces, a Continental Army, and criticized immigrants who expressed alien sympathies and who poured the poison of disloyalty into the very arteries of our national life. Such creatures of passion, disloyalty, and anarchy must be crushed out. Although his anti-hyphenism was never as shrill as Theodore Roosevelt's, Wilson nonetheless tested the nativist waters. Less concerned with enforcing unanimity in American opinion, Bryan accused the president of joyriding with the Jingos.